we will next convene our City Council study session for April the 1st. Again, I'll note that Councilmember Heredia is unable to attend today and is excused. I will note that at some point during our meeting, we will need to excuse Councilmember Spilsbury, who will be attending a family funeral for her father-in-law, Ralph Spilsbury, who was a pillar in our community. So please extend our condolences to your family, Julie. You bet. The first item on our agenda is to discuss the agenda for our April 5th, 2021 regular council meeting. I know there are, Mr. Brady, I know this is a packed agenda, and we actually do have some great staff presentations teed up for this. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor. Would you want me just to tell you which ones those are, and then the council will go through it, or how do you want to do it?
Let me tell you what I think we'll just, I have 5A, 5F, 6F, and then I know Mr. Luna has a question about 4B. So there might be more, I guess.
No, that's a good start. That's
Okay.
a good start. That's
yeah,
great.
maybe we'll just start at, should we just,
Should we go to 4B, or I guess Amy decided?
Amy's ready to go. Are we, is Amy? Correctly so, Amy, you were first.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I was under the impression that's the case, but I can certainly step back and let someone else go.
Thank you for playing your role correctly. So we'll begin, with Mr. Brady, with your permission, with 5A. This is establishing the Mesa Education and Workforce Development Roundtable.
Thank you.
Amy Trethway, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Mayor Giles and Chris and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you a little bit today about this proposed resolution that you'll be voting on Monday night. So the Mesa Education Workforce Development Roundtable, like I said, is a resolution, and basically what it will do is in essence, it will solidify a P20 framework of education in our community. So for those of you that are familiar with education, you know that it runs along a continuum, starting with P for preschool, all the way to the year 20, which is typically our age 20. So we are typically educated in some way, whether it's a certification or a degree or some sort of career track by that point, and we're off into our career. So what we've been doing up until this point here in Mesa, prior to introducing this resolution for your approval on Monday night, is we've been doing what I can call little sprinkles of participation along that continuum. So we have had a great amount of commitment and activity, most recently in our post-secondary education strategy, with a lot of activity there with Mayor Giles calling together the Mesa Chiefs Higher Education Task Force last year prior to the pandemic. We also have a lot of work in our early learning area with our Mesa K Ready program, which is an embedded preschool partnership in our community, in our largest school district here in Mesa, which is from across the nation. That's a pretty impressive thing for us to do, to embed something into our school district. So not only are we already active in preschool, we're active in high school, and then now what we're doing is shifting and sort of focusing, because of pandemic related issues, which we all know education and workforce has greatly been impacted. You as a council identified education and workforce as a strategic priority from this point out. We've also had other partners in our community. Really important to talk about our learning partners here with the East Valley Partnership Education Committee, our Mesa Chamber of Commerce Education Committee. Also, Mesa Community College used to have a business and education strategic team, and so does our own economic development office. So they're heavily involved in really lifting up our local businesses. I know you are all aware of what they've been providing. So if you take all of those learning partners, all of our community advocates, and collaborate together, what you get is a recommendation to then really establish this continuum for the long term across Mesa in our community, both embedded from a municipality perspective in the work that we do, but most importantly, the resolution will create the roundtable embedded into what we're doing in our community. It will also establish the purpose, the mission, the membership, and the responsibility of the roundtable. Some of that to which, of course, there are recommendations based on not only research on our local economy, but I have to mention that Mesa has been partnered strategically, both regionally and statewide, across the nation, with what needs to happen with education and workforce to collectively impact what our community, our residents, and our businesses need now post-pandemic. So some suggested proposed mission for the roundtable would be they would serve as a centralized, streamlined body so that we are taking all of those efforts from those previously mentioned groups, committees, and ourselves, and making sure we're all in the same direction, working toward the same goals. We'll also track our progress and have the expectation that we update that both to you and to the community on a forward-facing education data-related dashboard. As we move through and meet our goals, it's important we communicate how we're doing so that we stay on track with our partners. So we will continue the efforts that I've mentioned before, but the roundtable will also really formalize our partnerships and really synergize that commitment we have to our businesses in Mesa and our future employees and employers that we have here, as well as our residents. So that being said, if the resolution passes, the recommended roundtable composition is really set into two sections, 17 member total. 8 positions would be based on where that person is employed. For example, whoever serves in the role of the superintendent for Mesa Public Schools will always have a spot on this roundtable. And the other 7 positions are impact-based. I'm sorry, those would be 9. So we have 8 that are position-based and 9 positions that are based on your impact. So one of you from Mesa City Council would be appointed to this roundtable. 1 person from Mesa Public Schools, School Governing Board, and some other recommended spots include nonprofit leaders, diversity and inclusion experts from the community, business leaders, and then also we have identified the need for an educator and a parent to adequately round out the representation and the collective impact this structure and this roundtable would serve for education and workforce across Mesa. So other things the roundtable would commit to do would be, like I said, report to you quarterly. We have minutes. We have goals that are aligned with state and regional outcomes. And then also the roundtable would be able to create subcommittees to tasks that would be tasks with all of the goals and outcomes that we have on our list that we'd like to meet. In terms of recommendations for those, these are samples, and I emphasize sample goals because we have identified quite a few that are aligned with Achieve 60 AZ and local and state and regional goals. But for example, the roundtable will look at increasing enrollment for Mesa residents, both for their children and for themselves and for their older children that need post-secondary or workforce development. Also, across the board in Mesa and in Arizona and across the entire United States, we have to increase our achievement post-high school. And that looks like in the way of certifications, licenses, degrees, technical training, things like that. We'll also serve as a resource. We'll make sure that we're conducting studies, making recommendations, and collaborating to meet our goals. So really, in essence, like I said at the beginning, the resolution that you will be voting on Monday will cement the efforts in Mesa so that we both create thriving businesses and residents. So our businesses have the expectation that future employees will be educated and motivated and thriving, and our residents have the expectation that they will have access to education, certification, and a higher livable wage so that they can enjoy their employment. And then our economic development then there is positively impacted, and we create a learning community for everyone. So with that, I'll take questions if you have any related to the resolution.
Thank you, Amy. I'm sure we've got several. We'll go with Mr. Luna and then Ms. Pillsbury.
First of all, thank you, Amy. It just makes perfect sense for the city of Mesa to convene these groups together because I've been in education all my life. And I have served on a number of committees over Mesa Community College, certainly with the Mesa Chamber of Commerce. Yes. And you have all these independent groups doing the same thing. Bringing them together makes a lot of sense, especially when we're talking about workforce development. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate this effort. I'm going to be supporting the resolution. I think it's a smart way of how we deal with education in our community, and I appreciate who you've put on the committee as well. So thank you for this effort. I think this is a great idea, and I think we're going to get a lot of results because of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Luna.
Thank you. Julie.
I was essentially going to say the same thing, but thank you so much for all of your hard work on this. I too love the idea of bringing all groups together. We're all serving the same people, same community, and so if we can all come together in all different aspects, and I think some really great things can happen from this, and so I am also in support of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Well, I have to chime in also and express my support
Yes.
for this program. And some of the major reasons is a great way for us to combat homelessness, people who are struggling, by having education to give them that opportunity to earn a living wage. We know that wages have not kept up with the cost of housing, the cost of living, and we have to do everything we can to be able to uplift our residents so they can enjoy a great quality of life. It also contributes to our economic benefit, of course. This is why we call it a workforce development. By having a more educated workforce, we can also attract jobs with employers offering better wages. So thank you for all the work. I know you've been working on this a couple of years now, and you're phenomenal in doing this, and I look forward to the progress of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, Amy, when we had when you visited with me about this, I really feel like this is important because the foundation of Mesa is based on our education and our workforce, as the colleagues have said. And, you know, education starts at the pre-kindergarten and it goes all the way up through all ages. So I appreciate you doing this and working on this, and this will be a great thing for our city. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to jump in. Sorry.
You bet.
I'm behind you, so you can't really see me in front of you.
You're
I'm over
in
here
front of
like,
me.
hey, pick me. Amy, thank you for the presentation. And we had talked a little bit about this, but it just dawned on me as I'm going through the position-based, there's no representation from EVIT. And I think EVIT plays a crucial role, or should play a crucial role in this, because they are teaching the trades to our youth. And, you know, not everybody is geared to be a degreed attorney or lawyer or doctor or what have you. And I think it's important that we include the trades in this. And so you should think about perhaps putting a superintendent of EVIT into the fold there as well, and having them be part of this discussion and part of this group.
Yeah, absolutely. Point taken. I have had plenty of discussions about that in terms of where EVIT would fit best. So I appreciate that feedback, and I definitely will look at that.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you.
You know, I have to echo that. I think that we do need to include EVIT.
Yes.
Just a side note, which is sort of comical, is that Amy and I, when I was over at EVIT, she was a student there. So we definitely need to support EVIT.
Yeah, EVIT, yes, EVIT matters.
EVIT
because
matters.
I was a student there.
Yeah,
Thank
we were
you
students.
for reminding me of that.
Yeah, and I was
Yes.
doing television, so
So long ago, wow.
it's been a long time.
Yeah,
So we
thank you,
definitely
though.
need
Yeah.
to support those kind of programs. The technical education programs are essential as we move forward. So.
Yeah, and Chad Wilson over at EVIT is dialed into the concept. He's not been left out. It's just about positioning the roundtable. We will meet quarterly. We will have subgroups that will have more interaction. So I want to make sure that EVIT has the most impact and they're positioned in the right space. So absolutely excellent feedback. Thank you.
So Amy, to that point, this group is the top of an
Yes,
organization, actually.
exactly.
Can you describe what other
Yes.
organizations, committees, what would be, CTE certainly will be a huge part of this. But
Yes, absolutely. So our thought partners I mentioned include Mesa Public Schools, Mesa Community College, Economic Development, ourselves, and EVIT, and the like. But underneath this roundtable and the executive level leadership, there are some proposed subgroups that will attack each outcome related to Achieve 60 AZ and our educational attainment goals. For example, we will have a team that's working on workforce and business development, and they are a cross-sector team from Mesa Community College, ourselves, and in this case, EVIT with technical training. So the myriad of subgroups will include everyone in the community who has their finger on the pulse of what's happening. Another subgroup will be equity and inclusion. So we will have someone that'll look at all of our policies and our decisions and make sure that we're looking at equity and inclusion as we move this through the things that we need to do to increase our attainment. So I will come back to council with information on the details related if the resolution passes on Monday. I'd like to come back and give details on the structure, who's on those sub-teams, how it will work, and what our outcomes and our goals will be for the first year. So we'll have time to really get into the details and get your input on what that also could or should look like, because you will be that body we'll be reporting to.
Okay, thank you. So I think
Yep.
this will continue to evolve. This
Yes.
is a great concept. I think Mesa is taking a leadership role in doing this. I think it makes perfect sense for cities to use their ability and to convene, and that's what this is. And we'll consolidate all the silos that are going on in Mesa
Yes.
of all the wonderful people and wonderful organizations that want to support education. So I think we'll look back on this as one of the more significant things that we do during our service on council is creating this organization. So, Amy, I'll join in thanking you for your hard work on this, and I look forward to supporting this resolution as well. Council,
Thank
any
you.
other questions or discussions on this? Thank you very much,
All
Amy.
right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Brady, should we go to 5F or 4B? 4B, I think Mr. Luna, why don't, we'll turn the time over to you. Do you have a question on 4B?
Sure, I was hoping that Cindy would talk to us about the restoration of the seats over at the Piper Theater as well as Aikida. Now, I'm thinking it's 16 years old now, right? 16 this year, is that correct?
Hello, Mayor and Vice Mayor, council members. I'm Cindy Ornstein, Director of Arts and Culture for the city and also Executive Director of Mesa Arts Center. And yes, those seats have been in place for 16 years now and have seen the posteriors of over 3 million visitors enjoy them. So that's a lot of sitting and bouncing and a lot of wear and tear on those seats.
Right. Now, the Restoration Fund, tell me a little bit about that.
So the Restoration Fund is an amount that's incorporated into every ticket and every also tuition purchases in the studios. And the Restoration Fund is dedicated to the restoration, meaning maintenance and improvement of the specialized facilities and equipment that we have in the Mesa Arts Center that are not the standard equipment in city buildings, so the seats are included in that. So the patrons of the theaters have in fact given money as part of their ticket fee so that we could maintain things like our seats for them.
And right now, it's advantageous because unfortunately, with the Mesa Arts Center's closed because of the pandemic. And so this is probably a good time to go ahead and retrofit the seats, if you would.
Exactly. It's a good time, and it's really quite needed. There's tears in the upholstery, many of which we've been trying to keep up, but many of them can't be repaired because of the way that it's torn. We have the hardware that has started to fail, and there's also been deterioration of the foam in the seat pads. And we've been able, through a cooperative agreement, to actually get a better price for replacing them than it would have cost to refurbish, and we'll have much more life expectancy as a result as well.
Great, thank you so much. We want to make sure it's pristine place for people to come and view and come and sit and watch a wonderful performance once we're able to open.
Thank you very much. Yes, it will be pristine, and it'll also be more comfortable.
Great.
And I want to add that we've been able, because of the cooperative agreement, we've been able to work with a seating company that is an American company where the parts and maintenance of them going forward will be facilitated in a great way. So we expect to be able to have a better ability to maintain on a regular basis because of where we're getting the seating.
Okay, great. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
Thank you, Cindy. Council, any other questions on this agenda item? Okay. Thank you very much, Cindy.
Thank
We look
you.
forward to getting back in the theaters as soon as we can.
We're looking forward to it too. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Brady, should we talk about 5F? Is that Jeff and Jeff? Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Jeff McVeigh, Manager of Downtown Transformation, and with me today is Jeff Robbins, one of our Downtown Transformation Project Managers. We're very pleased to be able to be here today to present to you a memorandum of understanding for the Transform 17 project with the development partner. And to get us started, I'm going to hand over to Mr. Robbins to give us an overview and a reminder of how we got here today.
Mayor, Council, good morning. The object of our discussion today is a piece of city property located at the southwest corner of Mesa and University Drives, commonly known as Transform 17. And this area is bounded on your screens by a red polygon. So a quick recent history of the site. In 2019, there was a community visioning process that many of you engaged in and may remember. And we engaged in that with the surrounding neighborhoods to come up with different principles for how this development should occur. And 6 of those principles are, and resulted from that process are, vibrant and active, good neighbor, varied district, strengthens downtown, publicly accessible, and complementary to the surrounding area. We took those guiding principles and we put those into an RFQ and then into an RFP to find a qualified developer for the site. And that developer that was selected through that competitive process was Mira Vista. And we have been working with Mira Vista since to develop an MOU, the contents of which we will be sharing with you today.
Okay, so in the time since we've done our master planning, we have been working with Mira Vista to develop this memorandum of understanding and to get a better sense of what their vision and their goals are. So there is a strong focus on having a multi-use community here, but in this instance, they are focusing on healthcare and wellness with the intent of focusing on types of uses such as, research and development, trying to bring technology and innovation into this site, in addition to meeting our goals of having a strong residential component, as well as in having neighborhood serving commercial, retail, and restaurant. One can imagine that there can be a strong relationship in the innovation technology as we talk about healthcare going into the future. Even as we look at ASU, which is under construction here today with their digital media and technology, while we think about that as gaming and film, when we talk to them and they think about the industries in which they can have impact, healthcare is one of those major industries in which that digital media can have a strong impact. So we can definitely see a strong relationship that can happen with what we are already developing in our innovation district and how this can also feed into it. So from a actual memorandum of understanding perspective and the deal points that are included, much of this is really about setting the framework for ongoing and future negotiations with the developer. We have this divided into 3 stages, each of which have milestones that must be met within a certain period of time. The first stage is within 30 days of council's action on the memorandum of understanding. They need to finish their due diligence, which is essentially what you see on the screen. I won't read it to you, but they need to go out and do their site assessments and make sure they're comfortable with the site. Within 3 months, we need to have a market analysis. So we need to know that the economics and the market is there to support the vision, as well as starting to really get those master plan alternatives developed that we can start taking out to the neighborhood. Within 6 months, we need to complete that master planning. We need to get the phasing figured out, and we need to really start digging in with the neighborhood, presenting it, getting their feedback, and refining as it goes on. By the time we get to the end of the 9 months, at the end of the period of this memorandum of understanding, we should have a final master plan. We should be presenting that master plan to our neighborhoods, and we should be identifying that first phase of the project so that we can get going on executing the actual project itself. It's important to note that much like all of our other projects, this is a very large project. This is 25 acres of city-owned land. So we are going to be very interested in making sure that all the way through the developer has got the financial commitments able to pull off this project. Some additional obligations that are included in the MOU that are some of the higher level deal points. As part of this agreement, the developer is going to, over the course of 9 months, they're going to expend a significant amount of funds to do the master planning necessary to get to a first phase. In consideration for that effort, the city is willing to enter into an exclusive negotiations agreement. So essentially for the period of the MOU, the city is committing through resolution today that we will not enter in or entertain any additional negotiations with other developers. We also are committing to negotiate development agreements and purchase agreements within that 9-month timeframe. And if, as necessary, the city will go and seek independent economic benefits analysis as necessary should a GPLET be something that the developer requests and that the city council supports. We are also committing to customized review schedules, and at the city's discretion, and as we negotiate the project, we could be looking at reimbursement for some public infrastructure costs, as well as providing the statute allowed impact fee offsets for the development that had been on the site prior to today. Some final provisions. Again, this MOU specifically includes the exhibit of those 6 guiding principles from the master planning effort. We did 6 months of master planning with the community that generated those guiding principles, and we want to make it clear that any project, any development that comes out of that is still going to be consistent with those 6 guiding principles. We are also included in the MOU is the establishing that the fair market value of the property will be how we work forward on purchases and leases of the property. There could be offsets to that fair market value as it relates to developers' investment into public infrastructure. Things like utilities and parks could be used to offset the purchase price. Developer is going to be responsible for any utility cost as it relates to servicing this site, and they are committing to using all of City of Mesa utilities. This is again, 25-acre site, so we anticipate this is going to take 5 to 10 years to develop, so there will be phases over time. And we will be looking at, since this is city-owned land, we will be looking at the uses that the developer is proposing to make sure that they're all going to be compatible with the type of neighborhood that we want to create, so there could be some restriction of uses. Again, this is a 9-month period, and at the end of 9 months, the MOU expires. The one caveat I have to that is that we gave ourselves a little bit of wiggle room should we be negotiating in really good efforts and good faith here, and we get to the end of a 9-month period and we're just a little bit, we need another month or two, we have given ourselves the ability to extend the period of this MOU if both parties agree to it. And with that quick overview, I'm happy to entertain discussion and questions.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins and Mr. McVeigh. Council, questions for these gentlemen? Mr. Freeman.
Okay, Mayor, I'll jump in and break the ice. When I first heard the presentation, I was kind of skeptical about it because I think we've deviated from the initial survey of the neighborhood and everything, or master plan that we had initially. And so this is going to take some, use the word digestion of our neighborhoods to see, how compatible it is with their visions. However, us as council members, the fiduciary responsibility lies with us in voting for this. And first of all, I like the time stamps for the 9-month and, the certain benchmarks that they have, because if it can't move forward, we need to move forward as a city. And I express that to the developers. But again, it's, having the research and everything that they're doing and what they presented to me, I'm supportive of it. I told them I'm supportive of it, but skeptical too. So I hope they can come back at the end of the day with institutions or colleges or businesses that say, hey, we've got this plan. So I look forward to that day, and it'll be a relief to have Site 17 transformed into something that we can utilize in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Mr. Luna.
Thank you, Jeff and Jeffrey. I appreciate the presentation, and as you know, I met with you as well. I really do like the innovation piece of it, but to me, what I'm concerned about is the compatibility with the neighborhoods. We want to make sure that, although innovative, and I'm very supportive of innovation, it does have to be compatible with the neighbors. This is something that they're going to have to live with many, many years. I'm in District 5, so only when I come into downtown will I see this, but it does have to be something that those residents in and around that area are going to have to live with as they move forward. So I'm interested to see what you get in terms of results based on your survey and neighborhood conversations.
Thank you. Councilmember Spilsbury.
I just wanted to express my support for the MOU. I think that it's a good idea to go forward, see what they can come up with. I also met with the developers. I liked their energy. I liked the ideas that they had for the site. I think there's some really neat opportunities for some partnerships with colleges and different things going on there, but same concerns that we all have, but I'd like to see what they come up with moving forward.
Thank you. And I know the vice mayor has something to say about this.
Of course, I have a lot to say about this. I'm glad you went before me, knowing that you need to leave soon. I've been involved in this discussion well before we even had the consultants on board, and and being a downtowner, living down here, I'm very passionate about it, and so I have a lot to say about it. So just a few things I'd like to point out for the public in the MOU, which I am supportive of the MOU, that the property will be sold in phases. So after phase one we'll sell the property. After phase one is complete and done, then we'll look at the sale of phase two. So just so everybody knows, we're not selling the entire 25 acres at one time. We're doing it phase by phase and making sure that each step along the way is accountable to our expectations. And each phase will be presented to the public and approved by council. I'd like to also request that, I don't know if this needs to go in the MOU, but I would like regular briefings as we go through this process. I think it's important that we don't get to the end and then find out there's some missteps or some misunderstandings of our expectations. And I would like to also recommend that we use a professional consultant for the community outreach, so we can make sure that all voices are engaged and heard. We don't, as someone who's professional at this, knows how to interact with the public to maximize those conversations instead of just leaving it to a developer or architect whose skills are not necessarily developed in that way. The exciting thing about this is 25 acres in a downtown, what any city, any downtown would give to be able to have this mass of land in order to shape the area for the city and the downtown. And we, as citizens of Mesa, we are the owners of this property. And so it is critical that we become involved in its development and what we would like to see for our city. It's an excellent opportunity. I would like to see this be a spectacular development that makes impact not only for our city, but is referred to regionally, maybe even across the nation, in the innovative way of what we've done economically and for our citizens, especially our local community, and empowering them. We have tremendous development going on in the downtown area, and we certainly know gentrification will occur. It is starting to occur now, but we also need to protect the citizens that are already here and give them the opportunities to elevate their quality of life. We've been depressed in this area. This property serves as another tool in order for us all to lift and rise together and not push back anybody. We've had hundreds of residents participate in the guiding principles that you said. And some of the things I wanted to point out that weren't necessarily spelled out here is that we did, and I know I'm getting a little bit into the weeds, but I want to reiterate that we want for sale residential units included in this. We have a lot of rentals going on in our area, but there is a severe shortage of ownership opportunities to live here. In the guiding principles were a market square for public uses, for gatherings and events. It was also open space, green space that is connected to our downtown and to Pioneer Park. A flex blocks providing opportunities for innovation and entrepreneurship. So we'll get into more of the details as the master plan is put together and the community outreach is done. I can't say enough how important it is to listen to the local community. We have a wonderful community here in downtown Mesa, and it is filled with collaboration and support for the entrepreneurship and innovation. There's a certain magic that occurs, and I don't want to see it diluted by a development that is very corporate and not inclusive and not part of that community. I don't want to see it as a separate segment of what we have. I want it to accelerate and build upon the community that we already have here, and it is so important to include them. So in the council memo, I wanted to also underscore that it is identified to be a unique and innovative project vision. So this isn't necessarily it is something a little bit out of the box. I don't want to say, well, maybe healthcare and wellness is a good investment. It's a great industry right now. But is that really serving our mission of being innovative and unique? I understand, that, as you pointed out, there are aspects of that in education and research and development that do serve that. But I wanted to make sure that we are not a bunch of doctors' offices and just the status quo of what healthcare is if we go in that direction. This is certainly need to be community-led. And in the MOU, it states a new bar for quality and innovation within downtown Mesa, again, underscoring that. We want to give people a reason to be there. I want to come to downtown Mesa. It's a great place, and that area up there, we've got to go in there to create that community, have that interaction, not that it's a separate development of buildings that only if you need to go there is the reason you want to go there. How can we draw people there? So the priority is in serving our community, making sure it's economically viable, of course, being unique and innovative, a spectacular development that we can all be proud of and talk about for many years to come. This is our opportunity to make significant impact for our city and the surrounding area. So we've all been waiting a very long time to get this started, and I'm in support of moving forward with the MOU. Our expectations are very high as a community, and I look forward to working with our community and Mira Vista Holdings. Thank you.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, if I may, thank you for those comments, well taken. If I can clarify just one little nuance as it relates to the phasing, and I think this is an error that I made in our briefing earlier this week. Our intent is to have this performance-driven phasing so that we know that they're performing on one phase before we move on to the next phase. I don't want to set the expectation that they have to be fully completed with one phase before we're willing to go on. Some of these phases may take 2 years, 3 years to construct. So we want to be able to know that they're performing well before we move on to the next phase. So there may be some overlapping of phases.
Excellent. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Any other council comments? Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. Jeff, thank you guys for the presentation. You know, I remember when we brought this, when the consultants brought this forward last time, and I wasn't overly impressed with all the residential, you know, and the consultants that we hired at the time, and this was what, three years ago or so, you know, said, yep, you have to have all residential. And so they ended up packing, you know, the entire Site 17 with residential, you know, beehives stacked on top of beehives. And there was no wow factor to the project or to the concept. And that was something that the residents continued to say over and over and over was there has to be a wow factor. I think, you know, from a council's perspective, I know that we've talked, well, since I've been on council, so for at least the last 6 years, and I'm assuming it's probably gone longer, was you know, increase in the median income in the downtown area and really across our entire city. And I like where this consultant's going. I think, you know, every community has to have medical in their area, hospital to cater to the residents in the area. I know the downtown area doesn't necessarily have a hospital close by that they could utilize. So I like where the consultant was going with this. You know, I think there's some fine tuning that needs to be done. but bringing the jobs into our downtown area for our community is an important aspect of the project, and so I'm happy with where they're going. I would support it, especially the phased approach, because I don't want to necessarily just start sticking shovels in the ground and haphazardly building. It needs to be well thought out, well planned, and it needs to be something that builds not only character within the community, but it's something that's also helping drive job creation and increasing the median income within our community. So thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Everything that I would like to say has been said already. I think all of us are a little frustrated with the glacial pace at which we've seen progress at Site 17, but it's good that I think I support the MOU. The fact that now we've got some very talented developers, people that have done some very impressive projects, and I think we just need to see from them that this is a priority and that they're going to bring their full set of talents and attention and resources to this project, because as has been indicated, we have very high expectations. So, gentlemen, thank you for the hard work, and we'll look forward to continuing to support this. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you. I just want to ask the Jeffs, if I could say it that way. Are you going to be here in 10 years? Because I want you to manage this project all the way through.
Mayor, Mr. Freeman, unless Mr. Brady no longer likes us, you will see us here for the next 10 years.
Well, one of you can take over and mentor the others, so let's just keep it that way.
And Mayor, 2020 disappeared without it in a blink of an eye, and I guarantee you that the next 9 months is going to go the same way out.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you, Mr. Brady. I think we're also expecting a presentation on 6F, is that right? This has to do with updating our public park regulations. For those who are following at home, these are all, I'll tap dance while our presenters come forward. These are all items that are on our Monday night agenda, likely will remain on our consent agenda, and we're getting some staff reports on these items. Ladies, welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Andrea Moore. I'm the Acting Director for Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities. And with me is Sarah from the City Attorney's Office. Good morning. We've been working through some revisions to the Parks Code. And so the last time it was revised was about 10 years ago in 2011. And as a lot of people have noticed, especially over the past year, the way people are using our park system continues to evolve. And we wanted to put some changes in place that would help reflect putting better management in place and more defined processes to continue to allow our citizens to enjoy the parks that they love all through their neighborhoods. So a lot of the changes in here are very minor changes or wording changes. And we're not going to talk in too much detail about that. There's not a whole lot of new information in there, just refined definitions and processes to help clarify questions and concerns that have come up over the years. But there is one section that's new, and it puts into code how to issue permits in the park system. We have always issued permits in the park system, but it wasn't in code. And so this is putting a defined process in place so that people understand and our staff understand what it is that requires a permit and what the process is to go through that request. We put a definition in place for special events. For example, permits have always been required to rent a ramada or a sports field, and those aren't changing. But a special event we defined as something that brings 10 or more members of the public together. And so we would require a permit in that situation. It could be in a park, it could be at a pool, it could be in a retention basin, a sports complex. But the bringing together 10 or more people, distributing either for sale or for free any food or goods, that would require a permit as well. So with that, we also put into place what processes can be considered to deny a permit. That's at the bottom of your slide here. And it would be an incomplete application. It could be that they haven't finished telling us what they intend to do. We're needing more information and they haven't been responsive on what we need to do to help support their event. But it can also be if we start to see an established history of abuse of that permit, that we can consider that as grounds for denial of a permit. With that also, there's an appeal process that's established with this new code, so that if our staff have denied a permit, there is a way for us to reconsider that, and it's defined in this code. Generally speaking, people that are putting in place a special event in a park would be putting a permit in there because they're wanting to exclude other groups in terms of having a defined event space. Or, and for example, in that case, anybody can come in and have a picnic or a birthday party at a Ramada. But if they're trying to make sure that that is exclusively available to them, they would rent the Ramada. And the same thing with a special event. When you're bringing in 10 or more folks and you're wanting to have a defined space that's set aside specifically for that use, it would have a permit. We're asking that people continue to clean up after themselves and not do anything that would interfere with the rest of the park use going on around them. And so we can monitor those things, and our enforcement, park rangers or police department can help get involved if people start to push boundaries in terms of violation of the terms of those permits.
And I just wanted to make one clarification regarding special events. The definition of a special event is really when you're going beyond the normal use of a park, regardless of how many people may be involved. So that would be if you're bringing in, for instance, a sound system or a dance floor or something that you can't just walk in with the group and you're using a park picnic table. So that's what a special event is. And then above and beyond that, if a group is intending to or will attract 10 or more members of the public to an event and they're passing out food or beverage or any other sort of items, that's another type of event that will require a permit.
All right, so that's the new section that is added to the code.
We've got a couple of questions. Let's go, Mr. Luna, then Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for the presentation. Now, as far as any violations, how do you determine that? Do you send a park ranger to make sure that these individuals have a permit? And then if the park ranger determines that they are violating the scope of the permit, is that how you find out? Do we have enough park rangers to do that? I'm not sure how this happens.
Mayor and Councilmember Luna, it is park rangers. It is in large part driven by if people are complaining about what's happening in the park, and then we can respond in that way. And we have park rangers on when the parks are open pretty consistently, and we are in the process of continuing to evaluate whether there are enough staff to that talk through a little bit later, I think, some initiatives that might increase our park ranger presence in the park system. But in general, it's complaint driven, or a park ranger drives by and sees something inappropriate. They have the tools in order to stop and either stop that use or evict somebody from a park in that situation.
And Andrea, if a police officer, we could also ask the police department to also enforce it too. It's not park rangers primarily, but, you know, if they're on the other side of town and we need to get someone over there, the police department can also respond.
Mr. Freeman.
So thank you, Andrea. On the permit, obviously there's some type of administrative review. Is there a cost for the permit?
Mayor and Councilmember Freeman, there are fees associated with it. And so if somebody is putting an event together in a Ramada, it's based on the size of the Ramada, ranging anywhere from about $13 to about $40 per hour. And then we also have open space permits, and that's really based on how much space they're wanting to use in the park system and whether we need to bring in any additional cleaning services or have any enforcement presence, or if it's an event that can happen and they clean up after themselves and move on. So an open space permit can range anywhere from $10 up to $125, again, depending on what is requested. And then if they need power, that would be an additional fee, or they're bringing in inflatables as an additional fee. Those kinds of things add to that.
Okay, thanks.
Well, quick question before we get to the Vice Mayor. Can events be reoccurring? So for example, can they say, I'd like a permit to hold, you know, at 9 o'clock on Thursday mornings for the next 6 months, or in perpetuity, this event?
Mayor, it can be a reoccurring event. Each time would be individually permitted, and that helps us notify our park staff and ranger staff on events where they might need to pay a little bit more attention to what's going on.
Okay, so an event is a one-time permit, but of course you can ask for multiple permits.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor.
Yes, I assume as far as distribution of food, beverage, or other items, this includes nonprofits who, of goodwill, they're trying to possibly serve the homeless or whatever, but I assume this is inclusive of that. And if it is, how are we notifying them? Because I know that sometimes they are using the parks for distribution of goods.
And Mayor, Vice Mayor Duff, that is, a permit would be required in that situation. And if they are in a park doing a food distribution and they meet the definition of what we're saying is a special event that requires a permit, we would go through an education process with them, usually with the park rangers. So if somebody sees a large group and they're concerned about it or they're bothering the neighborhood and they call and ask us what's going on, then our park rangers would stop by and provide more education about, you do need a permit, this is how you go about obtaining one. Again, the permit fees are generally pretty low, and it's really about us knowing what's going on and supporting those events as they're happening.
Thank you. I think we might have stopped you before you completed your presentation. Is there anything
Mayor, there's a final slide here just about some of the other definition changes that are in the new code. And so, again, these aren't necessarily brand new concepts. We're trying to make sure that people are able to enjoy the park system and not interfering with other people's enjoyment of the park system. And so, for example, it's been 10 years since it was updated. Drones are now specifically called out and categorized together with other remote control vehicles that have regulations. They can only be used in certain parks. Again, reminding people they need to keep their dogs on leashes and clean up after them and use a off-leash dog park with respect and not interfering with other people or having aggressive dogs in those situations. Splash pads are a new feature in our park system, and so adding that to a location where you can't bathe or do any inappropriate activities in a splash pad in an open park setting is added to there. Trying to make sure our walkways are clear for people who are exercising in the parks and bringing strollers to the parks, and so shopping carts were added as not being able to be stored in a park. As another example, selling any goods has to happen in association with a special event and through a permitted process. And so we're trying to make sure people aren't badgered by people approaching them to buy goods or services or food in the park unless they're there on purpose for a special event.
Great, thank you. Council, any additional questions on this item? Mr. Thompson? You okay? I'm sorry, Vice Mayor.
I have one additional question. So once you get a permit, is that to a specific location in the park, or is it just in the general vicinity of the park?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, it's for a specific location. And so if it's an open space permit, we're putting a general location, northeast corner of a park type thing in place. Or if it's with a ramada, the ramadas are numbered and it's identified that way.
Mr. Luna?
Just one quick question. What about if you're having an event and you bring in a food truck? Is that does that require special licensing, or how does that work?
Mayor, Councilmember Luna, it does require a permit specific to that event. And so the event would be permitted, and then we'd also have a permit issued that allows the food truck vendor to be there. There are state regulations regarding food trucks as well, and so this doesn't overlap or contradict that. But in general, a food truck couldn't pull up into the middle of a park and start selling without a permit.
I'd just like to say I really appreciate this. This is very needed in our community. One of the points of pride that I've always had in Mesa, or at least particularly the last few years, is what wonderful parks we have. We've had, with the support of the voters, some tremendous improvements in expansions of our parks programs in the city of Mesa, and we have national award-winning parks, and so it come with that. You know, we want to encourage utilization of these parks. We want people to feel welcome and comfortable and not hesitate, not intimidated, feel like this is really an attractive opportunity for them to enjoy our parks. So because of that, we need to eliminate the concept that some people might think that anything goes in a park. You know, you can come and do whatever you want, that you just can't. So we need to have more supervision, we need to have more park rangers, we need to have a more secure environment that the people and families will find inviting, and this is an important step towards that. So I endorse this and appreciate the effort of staff in bringing this forward. Mr. Freeman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. One other question came into my mind. What about urban camping, sleeping bags, mattresses in parks? Is that, I've seen that numerous times in our parks, so is
Mayor,
that being addressed in here or it's somewhere else?
Councilmember Freeman, we have never permitted camping into parks unless it's associated with a special event, might be a Boy Scout troop that comes in and has a special overnight camping. But camping in parks requires a permit. It has and continues to be not allowed in the park system, and this also provides additional clarity that if there are abandoned goods, including camping, living supplies that are left behind in the park, that we do have a mechanism and a process through code to dispose of those items.
So at Pioneer Park, I've been there numerous times, and so some of our homeless people will go there and roll out their bedrolls and sleep under a tree. Is that permissible?
Per code, it is still not permissible. The community court system and with the park rangers and the police department have been working together to try to help people address homelessness. All plays into that.
Okay.
And so that enforcement effort continues, but by code, it's not a permissible use of a park.
So is that part of the prior code or is this in this new code?
It's still included in this new code, and one of the main motivations is to help those people, educate those people, and try to get them into different programs. Through this code, we can help do that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go in the weeds a little bit. So if a homeless person shows up in our park with their shopping cart, their sleeping bag, and their dog, that's either on a leash or not on a leash, it's still a education or citable offense, and then we will do what we can to assist them? Does Mr. Brady want to weigh in?
Well, so first of all, you mentioned the shopping cart, so we've added that.
Yeah, you've added
We
that.
have
So
added that.
that would not be allowed, so that we could enforce that part of it. Someone just walking through the park with a sleeping bag and a dog is not illegal.
No, I get that.
But if they have the shopping cart, that would be something that a park ranger or a police officer could, address with that individual. Now, we say camping.
Well,
Is it
extended
illegal for
stay,
someone
let's
to
say
take a nap
extended
during the
stay.
day in the park? Usually our enforcement of camping happens after hours.
No, I've seen them during the middle of the
No,
day.
I'm not saying that. The question is that camping or,
Or
I think
recreational.
that's where it's difficult, I think, in that application of if someone is sleeping in a park during the day versus, it's much easier to enforce that certainly in the evenings. But it's a delicate balance between someone taking a nap in the park versus are they camping in the park? And I think that has to do with, like you said, they have a shopping cart and they have the sleeping bag. That may look more like a campsite than just taking a nap. So there's a lot of, we have to work through all those. Now, the police department and park rangers will be working on, approaching individuals, trying to educate them and work with that. But those are the delicate situations we have. But I think this certainly helps us with a lot more clarity and tools that we didn't have before.
Right.
So I think that will make it more comfortable for our park rangers and police officers to approach these individuals, and it helps us certainly when it appears in court. And that's the difficulty, is we've got to it's this part, but we also have to have the enforcement support in the courts also. And so by clarifying this, we think that'll help us.
Okay, so Andrea, is that the enforcement side, we're good there as far as the individuals coming to the parks? I mean, from the experience of park rangers and police officers, I mean, this kind of drives the decision-making of what we're going to add to this code.
Right, and Mayor, Councilmember Freeman, we also added a section that says if you're interfering with somebody else's use of the park. And so if we are finding an encampment set up in a picnic ramada or on a playground under the slide, those situations are interfering with other types of legitimate uses of a playground or a picnic ramada, and the park rangers or the police department can work on enforcement and moving people out of those situations so that a public can enjoy those amenities.
Right. And I'm sure we're using our navigators as needed too.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Council, any additional questions on this item? Vice Mayor.
I just want to state, all of us on council, I know particularly me and others, I'm sure, are very compassionate to those people who are experiencing homelessness. And I see that these beefing up of some regulations and such gives us the opportunity to approach these people who are in need of help and encourage them to get help. We have really created a robust program in order to help persons out of homelessness, and by sometimes a nudge of saying, it's not okay to camp here, it's not okay to store your things here. We have a shelter for you. We have community services for you. We want to be a help. So this is a way of encouraging them to get on that pathway rather than being content or resigned to the situation. So I wanted to say that I have a lot of compassion for those people experiencing homelessness, but I in support of these measures in order to create a public park space that everybody can be comfortable and encourage those who need help to get it with the assistance that we have in the city in our robust homelessness program. Thank you.
Thank you. Any, obviously, this is an issue that we have a lot to say about it. We really prioritize our parks. We take a lot of value in them. Mr. Freeman, I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, did you raise your hand?
I did. Thank you, Mayor.
You bet.
Just a really quick question, and maybe for Chris or for Pombier or for Natalie, but looking at our park rangers, would it make sense for them to fall under the police department's, roll the park rangers into the police department, so that because they have a lot of the same training. The only difference between a park ranger and a police officer is that the park rangers aren't armed and sworn officers, but they're essentially doing the same thing that our police officers are doing, which is keeping peace and enforcing the policies and ordinances that are on the books. So is there a reason why we couldn't put the park rangers under the police department's guide?
Mayor, Councilor Thompson, I think I would suggest that the role of the park ranger is much broader than just being enforcers. They do have that role, and it's supplemented and can be supported by the police department. But, park rangers are also intended to be the host of the park. They're there oftentimes in some of our less urban, more rural parks. They're kind of, they're park guides. They're there to inform, to make sure people are enjoying the parks and helping them with the rules. It's a different kind of approach and mentality that I think we don't wear cameras. They are intended to be kind of a host in the park, and where they need to be the enforcer, they will. I think it's important for the parks with all their facilities and all their acreage to actually have someone who's on ground all the time, who's on the ground working the parks and representing the Parks Department in the parks. I think that's kind of more their role, and certainly they play the role in enforcement, but most of the time they're there to make sure everybody's enjoying their time in the park. So otherwise, we're hiring more police officers, and I think you'll hear a presentation from the police department on Monday about their commitment to continue to support enforcement of these rules in the parks. You have on your agenda today the cameras that are intended to be able to put in the parks like we've done in Pioneer Park so that the police department has remote access to the viewing what's happening at the park so that they can respond. So we'll have eyes on the park. So I think it's intended, I think in most cities, it's intentional that you have a park ranger program separate than police officers, because I think it's intended from a community perspective, and it's intentional to be something different than just law enforcement. While they can play that role, I think hopefully when someone sees a park ranger, they see them also as, they can go up and ask them about something in the park and how to get a reservation and how to use a piece of equipment or have access to those kinds of amenities. So I think that's how we see it as being different than a police officer.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't trying to necessarily compare them to a police officer or wanting them to become police officers. I was just asking, would it make sense to put the park ranger under the police department?
Yeah,
because they're under code right now. Is that where they're at?
No, they're under the Parks Department.
Parks Department.
Because that is they need that connection with the Parks Department about the rules and what's happening in the sports fields, what's happening in the pavilions and the playgrounds. And so it's a very important role that the park staff needs to have someone like that in the parks.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I think we'll move on our agenda at this point. Thank you very much, ladies. This item will remain on the consent agenda, but without objection. I'm sorry, Mr. Luna. Yes, me too. Mr. Luna and I were thinking exactly the same thing, which is it's a great time for a break. I think we're a little after, we've been going a little over 90 minutes, and I know we're about to start talking about the budget, which sometimes, takes a few minutes to discuss. So we'll go ahead and recess and reconvene at 9:15. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we'd invite everyone to take their seats, and we'll reconvene our city council study session for April the 1st. I think I was premature in saying that we were done talking about our Monday meeting. We also do have a significant zoning case that I know is off of the consent agenda for a continued public hearing. It would probably be good to get an update. I know that staff and Mr. Freeman and others have continued to work with the developer and more significantly the neighbors. Would someone like to update us on where that is? Mr. Freeman?
Yeah, I'll start it out. Thanks, Mayor. So this past week, Planning Director, myself, met with the homeowners at the Waypoint. This is regarding 9A. And we had a good, solid discussion about this development on the property. And what we've worked out is a good neighbor policy, and some of the tenets to that, Mr. Appia, he can explain. But probably at the end of the day, you know, it's not going to be what they would like. And I've tried to work on, and we'll have a discussion about surface parking versus a parking garage and why that's necessary and why that's being built closest to the neighborhood, despite the building being built. So we can maybe, our economic director, he can weigh in on parking structure and tenants and development. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nana, and maybe he can give an explanation on some of the things as a zoning administrator, what he's going to do.
Good. Okay. Mayor, Council, so as part of the final approval that you'll be looking at on Monday, there is a condition of approval that says that the project will conform to the design review process. So as part of the design review process, the design review board has reviewed the elevations and the landscaping plan and has made certain recommendation, which comes to me as a planning director to have a final approval of the design review board. As part of my approval, there are 3 items that we've discussed with the neighborhood. Number 1 is a good neighbor policy. That also came up during the last discussion with the city council. So with a good neighbor policy, there are a couple of items that it's addressing. One is landscaping maintenance on the site, how it will be maintained if a tree is dead or removed, and cleaning up the landscaping areas. Another item is lighting. One of the issues that has come up is the neighbors they don't want to see the light in the middle of the night shining onto their property. So what the applicant is proposing with a good neighbor policy is to have sensors in the offices, well, in the current office that is under consideration, that whenever there is no usage, the lights will go off. And the second part is the parking garage. They are going to have this lighting system that would dim whenever there is no activity. So that's going to be part of the good neighbor policy. And they also have ways to address whenever there are noise, whenever intruders actually intrude onto the property, how those are going to be addressed. And then any other issues that may come up, who to contact and all that. So it's a well-crafted good neighbor policy. One of the things the neighbors have asked is they want me to share that document with them to review to make sure they are comfortable, and I'm going to do that before the end of today. I'm just working with the developer to fine-tune a few of the issues. And then the second part is landscaping plan. As we discussed the last time, one of the things that came up is the size of the trees. We wanted to make sure that at least the initial planting will still provide adequate screening. So the applicant has revised the landscape plan, and what they are proposing right now is, I think it's 48 box-inch tree sizes. That will be adequate enough to provide certain kind of screening during the initial planting as well. And then the third item is the elevations of the parking structure itself. Part of the design review recommendation was for them to look at examples of parking structures and find ways to really improve the elevations, the facade. We are still working with them. We've given them a couple of examples to look at, so they are going to be looking at that. But these three major items, as your condition of approval is referencing the design review process, I am also going to condition that, so it will be part of the design review project. And that's a concern that the neighbors have been discussing. They wanted to make sure that those conditions are memorized, is formalized, so they can have something to show in the future. If it comes up that they had a discussion with the applicant, they will have a point of formalized document to show.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know it's not going to be a perfect scenario. Maybe, Bill, you can address the parking structure itself and why that's, we have codes for that right now. I mean, there's parking codes based on square footage and putting the new building in. My goal, and I'd worked with the developer, is just, could we just do all surface parking? And you can explain why they said no.
Okay. Good morning, Mayor, council members. Councilmember Freeman, I think that there's a lot that goes into parking. First of all, that complex, Waypoint in general, is approximately 90% occupied. Now, remember, these are pre-pandemic. Not everybody's back in the office yet, just as the city's coming back. Other employers are starting to come back as well. But one of the competitive advantages is having enough parking. You get eliminated from projects or the opportunity to host a company if you do not have enough parking. Now, where Nana and I work together is to make sure there's not too much parking. But one of the things that we've gone back and looked at is this property will have, when built out, approximately 4.84 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. And that's the industry standard of how much parking do you have per square feet in the building itself, or leasable square feet. Now, when you look at what's the competition, the Union is the closest one, and they're offering right out of the gate at 6 parking spaces per 1,000. If you go down to the Grand right on the 202 in Tempe, and they're at 5 parking spaces per 1,000. And then I can keep going if necessary, Liberty and Watermark and others in Tempe. But when you compete on a scale with 1,000 employees coming in, you have to be able to park. And as soon as you build a building, you took away enough surface parking where you now have to go to structure. And there's a significant cost to doing that, and he's taking that on. And for us to have the ability to land these high-paying, high-wage jobs, then you need to look at building structures. I thought Nana's done a great job of putting the proper screening, putting the proper features on the building. But from a competitive advantage, that's what you need if you want the interest in attracting the high-wage jobs.
Thank you. Thank you, and I know there's been a lot of activity on this. I know council members have gone out and visited the property, and I'm sure we'll hear. I don't mean to have the hearing now. We want to do this on Monday so that the neighbors will be here and have the benefit of everything that we're saying about it. Hopefully they'll be made aware of our discussion this morning as well. I do have just a couple of quick questions. So design review, it still has to happen after our vote on, let's assume there's a positive vote on Monday. The developer still has to go through the design review process, and that's, I think, where you're saying that we can have stipulations, a good neighbor policy, a more robust landscaping package. Those types of stipulations can be added during the design review process. Am I understanding that correctly?
Mayor, correct, but let me just clarify that. So the design review board, they are a recommending body to me, and they've reviewed it and made recommendation to me to have a final approval. So with my final approval, it will have to have those conditions that we discuss as conditions of approval to the project. So that's what's going to happen.
I see. So they don't make the decision. You ultimately make those. They make recommendations to you, and so you can represent to the neighborhood. These are the conditions that I will require before we proceed.
Mayor, that's correct, and that's what we promised them when we met with them, that I will share all the documents and share the condition with them for them to see before my final approval, and then once it's approved and I sign, they will also receive copies of those letters and the documents, so they will have it on record as well.
I know there's going to be a robust landscaping plan with large, oversized trees. My experience has been that trees grow and they get bigger, and maybe 5 or 10 years from now, what's a big tree will be a huge tree, and there might be a haboob, or it will fall down. And I mean, to what extent are these good neighbor policies and this landscaping package, how is that going to be sustainable 5, 10, 15 years from now?
Mayor, Council, so the landscape plan, the type of trees that they are planting, we've reviewed it, and our design review board, who also has a couple of landscape architects on it, have reviewed it. So the type of tree is going to be adequate even at maturity. It will still be able to not invade or be excessive at that location. So what we are asking for, instead of planting small size, we're asking them to plant a bigger size from the start. But in terms of its overall maturity, there is a tree type that will be okay for where it's going to be located.
And is that landscaping package, is that enforceable in perpetuity?
Mayor, council members, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Well, again, I think it's important that we have this discussion Monday for the benefit of the neighbors, but I appreciate the fact that there's been a lot of activity and a lot of work being done on this. Mr. Freeman.
I know the Vice Mayor wants to ask a question, but just to continue, even if this is approved Monday, you still have the authority to, if any other requests come in from the developer and the neighborhood, you can still add it to the document and still make it a part of the,
Design review.
is that, I don't know what the word I'm thinking.
Mayor, Councilmember Freeman, that's correct. As we continue to work with the neighborhood, if there is any other additional information that we deem that is, right, appropriate to be added, I can so add that to the condition of approval for the design review final approval.
Yeah, because I will say that on Monday to make sure that the neighborhood's needs are met the best we can if it's approved. So thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
So question, on the staff report we have in the presentation on this, and it has approval with conditions. So those conditions will be updated with these good neighbor terms, or how will it appear or in the documents?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, so if you look at the staff report that is before you, condition number 3, I think. So the condition number 3 says compliance with all requirements of design review. So basically, you're authorizing the design review process, which is the process that we use for such projects. So my approval, basically, you've authorized my approval through this condition of approval. Approval, that's correct, yeah.
But then just, I'm sorry, will this be in writing? Because, for example, one of the allegations here is that there was, promises made to the neighborhood in previous years, and, oh, well, sorry, the property got sold. If you had a handshake deal with somebody, that evaporated. How are we going to document this?
Written disclosure to the residents today.
Yes.
Okay. And so they'll have a letter from Nana saying here, in perpetuity, here are the stipulations that this parking garage is subject to.
Mayor, Council, that's correct. So whenever we do the final approval for design review, it's a formalized approval letter that sometimes includes conditions of approval. So that's what it's going to be. So they will receive a draft for now because we're so finalizing it of the formal approval letter for design review with these specific conditions of approval, which include a good neighbor policy, the landscape plan, and then the elevation. So they will see all of them, and then once we finalize, the case gets approved on Monday. I will finalize the whole document sometimes in the coming weeks, and then I will send them the final signed copy from me as well with your zoning ordinance approval as well. So they will have both the design review and the zoning case all together. They will have those documents.
And that letter will then become a part of the zoning file as well? I mean, what happens if 10 years from now, this current group of neighbors that have that letter is gone? How does that letter continue to dictate what the terms are?
Mayor, council members, so condition number 3, which authorizes the design review process, makes my final approval binding because you are authorizing that process to be binding because of this condition for them to follow the design review process.
So, Mayor, the council is approving, as a condition of zoning, the stipulations under the design review board process.
Yes.
So that process by itself will have all these stipulations in it. Then the design review board, that package, or I don't know, that letter has to be attached. Design review board, remember, this stays with the project forever because design review board gets into landscaping, it gets into the architecture, if it's three-sided architecture and where the trash, the bins are, you know, all those elements that stick with a project for a long time.
That's correct.
And Mayor and Council, I'll just also add, and Nana said it, it's not unusual for DRB's approval, the subsequent approval by Nana also to include stipulations. And so the idea that you have stipulations on a DRB approval has occurred at least 18 years, as long as I've been here. I know that has occurred on different cases. So the concept has been around for a long time and so it's a nuance to say, no, it's not a condition on the zoning case, it's a condition on the DRB approval, but it's still within the sort of the zoning file. I mean, it's still part of the record, absolutely. It'll be in Nana's file in the planning department, you know, forever.
That's correct.
Okay, I guess that's my question. It will be become part of the permanent record, part of the permanent stipulations. 10, 20 years from now, people will be able to know what the rules of approval were. I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, I think I interrupted you.
No, I think I interrupted you, but anyway, so just to clarify, these conditions will sustain even if there's a new property owner?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, that's correct. So the conditions runs with the land. So whenever there is a change of ownership, yes, the conditions also apply.
Great. And then one other side note, I would like to, we had this conversation the other day, but encourage as much as we can with SRP, the beautification of the canal. And the reason is if we could get some kind of trees against the canal bank, it would greatly shield this area and kind of restore the sense of neighborhood instead of looking over the commercial thing. When I went out to a resident's home, I realized that the elevation in the neighborhood really dipped low, and then we went into their yard and going further down. So when I looked up at especially the building on the west side, it looked mammoth. It looked huge because the elevation had gone so down. So when you look up, you see this building that's almost looking like it's gonna land in your backyard. So the point of, I appreciate all the mature landscaping, of course, but for those homes that are affected in that way, having landscaping on the other side of their fence against the canal is giving that immediate barrier to the view and restoring that sense of neighborhood, and instead of feeling you're encroached by a commercial, and I think it, and development, and allowing that more of a transition feel instead of overbearing feel. Thank you.
Can I make a comment to that, Vice Mayor? The other board that I sit on, the Bureau of Reclamation will not allow a tree to be planted in the SRP right away. So if it has to be planted, it has to be on personal or private property, because they're worried about penetration of roots into the canal, into the gunite, thereby creating a leak. So especially if a canal is higher than the lower portion or private property there, like on the north side of the canal. So just so you're aware, the Bureau of Reclamation is requiring SRP to remove every tree within the right-of-way on the canal. Well, wherever the right-of-way is, just to the right-of-way. So if it's outside the right-of-way, personal or private property, then you can keep it.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that right-of-way extends, but thank you for that,
It stays.
that information. I mean, is it right up against the neighbor's fence? Anyway,
Typically, it's 50 feet from the edge of the canal, 50 feet north or south.
okay, thank you.
All right, well, again, I hope that this discussion, that the neighborhood, we might need to repeat what we all just said here on Monday to make sure that the neighborhood have the benefit of this. But I appreciate the efforts that have gone on. And I hope the neighborhood appreciates that we're doing all we can to address their concerns. Any other comments on that zoning case? We'll look forward to that hearing on Monday. That being the case, we'll proceed with the agenda for this meeting. Item 2A is to hear a presentation on the fiscal year 2021-2022 summary of the proposed city budget. Brian, you're always on the bubble, and we do prioritize the budget. I want you to know that.
No, it's good, Mayor. So in front of you, the presentation is, as you mentioned, the proposed city manager's proposed budget. And what we'll do is, this is more of an overview of the proposed budget. And then this kicks off our month-long, or just over a month-long, of presentations, of budget presentations. So after this, starting Monday, as you're aware, police will come and do their budget presentation, and they'll go into a little more details of what I'll be presenting today. So, and then after that, there'll be multiple departments. So it kicks off our nice, little over a month-long process. So the annual budget, balanced budget, every year, the city is required to appropriate an annual expenditure budget and set the secondary property tax levy. So this is starting that process. And the annual budget sets the maximum expenditure limit for the fiscal year. So whatever the total city budget is, that is the maximum expenditure limit that the city can spend. And so we're gonna set that this year. And then balanced budget means the total resources available to the city must sufficient to cover the budgeted expenses. So moving forward, in 21-22, the proposed budget, it meets our annual balanced budget requirements, but also continues the city's effort to maintain current service levels with an anticipation of reopening the public facilities throughout the fiscal year, for instance, the MAC and some of the recreational facilities and pools and things like that. So in this budget, we do have those budgeted in those departments. And within keeping in that, I presented a little over a month ago what the financial principles that we follow in creating the budget and maintaining the budget. So balanced net sources and uses, a 10 to 15% reserve fund balance over the 5-year forecasted period, and then also sustainability of programs and services. The fourth principle is to keep wages and benefits competitive compared to other Valley cities in order to retain and recruit quality staff. And then also, last but not least, is invest in capital and life cycle replacement projects. So those are the 5 principles that we keep in mind when we are reviewing the budget and creating the budget. So the fiscal year 21-22 proposed budget, as I mentioned, reflects current city operations. So during this current fiscal year of 2021, we did have some new positions related to service and other workloads, conversions of temporary positions and some restricted funding positions. Also, position costs have been revised for the coming up year of the medical and dental, workers' compensation, pension, and also step increases for all eligible employees, which is the 3% step increase that was discussed in December and January. So with that, even with that increasing costs to maintain current service levels, so even though we are maintaining our current service levels as of today, there are increased costs. Some of that is the city personnel costs of that range adjustment and step increase. Also, some contract increases for code compliance and animal control. And then some maintenance and utility contract increases for parks, rec, and community commercial facilities. And then also environmental management and sustainability, they have some costs increase just to maintain our current service levels. So going into a little, you'll see some themes throughout this with some focuses of those themes. The first one is the community safety, and it's police. So during the current fiscal year, we added 9 FTEs to the records unit. Moving forward, we're looking at adding 11 FTEs, sworn FTEs, also with some civilian FTEs, and then a traffic analyst, which will be shared with the transportation department. With continuing recruitment and training, There are 3 police academy, recruit academies that are in this coming up fiscal year budget, 21-22. So those 3 academies is budgeted at a cost of $3.8 million. And so the first academy will start in July, the next one in January, and the next one in April. And what this is going to do is there'll be a total of 110 recruits in throughout those academies, a total for the 3. So with the attrition of recruits falling out or anything like that, injuries, we're gauging about 77 graduates. So what that is going to do is the training is scheduled to maintain all the budgeted positions in a filled vacancy. So it is even though we'll have about 77 new police officers coming on board, we're looking to have, that is to help with any attrition, vacancies, any retirements, things like that, and keep up the level of the sworn positions. In addition, we are covering the 11 new sworn positions. So these academies will help those 11 new sworn positions, fill those. And then also last but not least, as part of the training, we have in the budget a forensics training and software licensing for the police department.
Mayor, if I could, real quick.
Yes, Mr. Thompson.
I have a question, and Brian, this probably isn't really related to you, but looking at the recruits that we're putting through the academy, 110 recruits going through, roughly 77 graduates. I had lunch with Commander Peters earlier this week, and one of the things that I always ask is, not only how are the troops doing, but how is he doing on the number of officers that he has, and he's actually gone up over the last year by 1 body. And so with all the recruits that we're putting through the academy, between retirements and so forth, he actually has only increased by 1 body out in Super, and that's covering both Councilmember Luna's district and all of District 6. And so I'm not sure, Monday when we start talking when we have PD do their budget, I think it's imperative that we see or understand how they're going to allocate bodies to a fast-growing population such as in 5 and 6 to help with response times. And so just food for thought for Chief Cost. I'm sure he's watching, but be prepared to answer that question on Monday.
Yeah, and Mayor and Council, I think you will actually see, we have a graph already in their presentation, that we have increased quite a bit of patrol officers on the street. And with the sales tax, we'll see additional patrol officers. Now, how they get allocated, I'm sure the chief will be able to explain that. But we do have more police officers on the street than we have ever had. And I think that's demonstrated also by, as you've seen recently, and the chief will go in more detail about our crime rates and our response time. So we'll be able to address that on Monday. But we are seeing increases in available patrol officers for the city right now.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're getting some staffed into Superstition. Also, Councilmember Spilsbury and I were talking offline, and we would like to also see another detective or 2 added to the Heat Squad as well. So we'd like to see that figured into the budget as well. Thank you.
So the next community safety is fire and medical. So within the budget, what we did this year, actually in 2021, we hired on and created 20 new FTEs for the medic unit transport, civilian FTEs. That is this current fiscal year. Also, during this current fiscal year, we added a fire fleet services assistant for support services. And then coming up in the 21-22 budget, we added a civilian paramedic to oversee the pharmaceutical program, all the pharmaceuticals that the fire stations have. And then with that, also with a focus on academies and training, there are scheduled in the budget 2 fire recruit academies. And that is, so there will be 24 total recruits to fill any vacancies. And then also included is an annual training budget increase of $300,000 towards the fire department's quarterly training.
Mr. Luna.
Maybe this is for Mr. Brady. I know as we ramp up the public safety facility on Power and Brown, are you looking at ramping up additional hires to fill those positions? As I see District 6 and explosive growth out there, there is a need to have a specific public safety facility to just deal with District 6. And of course, District 5 continues to grow. So this budget, we're anticipating that growth, the hiring of new employees for that facility. Maybe Mr. Brady, you can speak on that?
Yes, Mayor and Councilman Luna. So actually, that's built into that, the sales tax increase. And when we present these numbers to you, and the number, it's combined with the general fund, so it's all included. But to your point, we'll actually be hiring those individuals before that facility is actually completed, because we have the funds and we're bringing them on over the next, 3 or 4 years as we get ready to open up that facility. So they will be located throughout the rest of the department, and when we stand up that building, they'll be able to staff that. Yeah.
So yes, Mayor, Councilmember Luna, to reiterate that, yes, we do in the forecast when Fire Station 221 comes on or 222 or the public, we have that in the forecast of when those firefighters will be part of the expenses and part of the budget. So we put that in there in the forecast. So moving on to a different theme, and kind of over the encompassing theme of this budget is kind of what the city's theme has been for the past year now, is meeting community needs and growth. We have seen the community with some needs, but also with the growth of it. And with that, one of the focuses is supporting homeless services coordination plan. And this fiscal year, 2021, we've added a community engagement coordinator of one, but then also, I think as mentioned previously in a previous, about a week or two ago, is the community court program navigators. We added 3 of those to help out the community court this fiscal year. Moving into the next fiscal year, we will be adding a human services coordinator. We're also adding 4 park rangers. And then also for the Off the Streets program, we have in the budget for July through December of the $600,000 for the motel availability. And then as part of the growth part of meeting it is, we have added a plans examiner and a building inspector due to the growth in the construction of commercial and residential. So, and then investing, another theme is investing back into the community growth. One of the focuses is support education and workforce development. So in the 21-22 budget, we do have Mesa K Ready, and then also Mesa Promise as part of that, supporting the education and workforce. We also have in the budget a Mesa Business Builder to support the small business assistance program. And then with helping the investing back in the community, we also have equipment and commodities in preparation of reopening facilities to support the community re-engagement in the arts, and that is primarily the MAC, being able to restock the MAC with the equipment and commodities for when we reopen the MAC. And then another theme is investing in transportation and transit. So for transportation in the budget is a master plan for them to go out for a master plan, but also the continuation of the LED lighting conversion. And also shared with the police department would be a traffic analyst. And then on the transit side, we are in the budget is to expand services along Mesa Drive, and then also Stapley Drive and Broadway Road. And also is there the bus stop shade study is in there, so they can go out and get that shade study accomplished. And then also 10 bus stop shelters, which is the design and construction of those is in there. So this graph, this pie is actual the 2021 general governmental expense, just a kind of a flashback of when we set the budget last year and kind of the budget categories of personal expenses and then all the other ones. And just to reiterate that we are a service organization, and with that, our personal services is about 70% of the budget. And then with public safety, they are a total of about 68% of just the general governmental fund. So moving forward is the proposed budget, the 21-22 proposed budget. So right in the middle is the proposed budget, FY 21-22. And if you look down, the net sources and uses is what we're trying to do is we are balanced with our resources, with our sources and uses of just about a negative of $1 million, but for all intents and purposes, when you're $400 million, almost $500 million, that's pretty balanced from what we've seen. But however, moving out, so at the end, we'll have about a 32.1% reserve fund balance. However, moving out in that middle line of net sources and uses, we do see some negatives growing. And as I presented just over a month ago, that is where our expenses are growing higher than what we're anticipating our revenues. A majority of that is step pay and increase in personal services of that. And then our revenues, we are looking at this year and this year, which I mean fiscal year 21-22, but then also 22-23 and 23-24 is a slowdown of the one-time stimulus of the federal stimulus and relief packages. Remember, those are all one-time funds that we can use to support programs and things like that, but it's not ongoing. So we'll have to see how the economy goes and how this stimulus is moved out to where we can adjust to see if the trends are still good of individuals and people still purchasing online. That definitely has helped us purchasing online. And then also what's in there is also with some of it is the unemployment benefits. That is in our forecast, but that only ends at the end of September. We do have in our forecast a revenue ongoing for the new marijuana law that passed. That is in here. So we have things included, but we're still looking to see how the trends are. We're only a year into the pandemic and seeing how the economy is still going. And so with spring training, with the 25%, we won't know, unfortunately, we won't know how those revenues and that activity did for another about 2 months. So we're hoping that things that are opening up, that the revenues start coming in, and then we can adjust as we go. Remember, this is just a forecast. The column that we are looking for the adoption for the city manager's proposed budget is that center one, but then we have that forecast out there. So the real focus is this year's budget, which I believe looks good with the only a negative $1 million of net sources and uses.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
I just had a couple of questions on the 2021 budget versus the projected, which is about a $60 million difference. So you mentioned the stimulus dollars playing into that, and we experienced more sales tax than we had budgeted for. Spring training, had you already adjusted for that being, it's going to be a drop, definitely. Is that already calculated in there? Are we waiting?
That is the projected column of 2021, we have revised it to a 25%. So we looked at last year was basically half spring training year. It only lasted for about 2 weeks. And so what we did was we looked to see how ticket sales and how the trend of also retail sales was going, of people coming in, and kind of forecasted that to see what a 25% capacity of the facilities of the spring training would look like, with also anticipation of restaurants and bars and things like that opening up. So that does include a revised, the total sources of that $504.5 million does include a revised revenue estimate of including a little more open spring training.
Excellent. So is this approximately $60 million or the $50 million over? Is it completely attributed to, that sales tax thing? Or is it also a reallocation of personnel? through
It
the
is
CARES?
also, yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor Duff. It is a reallocation, so that $50 million of net sources and uses, what that is the CARES money. So we got $50 million of CARES money. So what happened is we were able to reallocate public safety's personal services to that CARES money, which freed up one-time savings in the general governmental fund, and that is a majority of what you are seeing there.
Great, thank you.
So that's the general governmental fund. Moving on to the utility fund. So similar to the general governmental fund, and I think I presented these, I think last year around October and November, we do have 5 principles that we try to meet, the city meets with the utility fund of similar to the general governmental fund of balanced net sources and uses. With this, we try to do a 20% or higher reserve balance, rate adjustments that are predictable and smooth throughout the forecast, so we don't so we try not to do any rate hikes, rate spikes, that is, on those. And then equity between residential and non-residential rates, and then affordable utility rates. So keeping those 5 principles in mind, and kind of going with the same theme as the general governmental fund of meeting community needs and growth. The environmental management and sustainability, we've added, this current fiscal year, we added 3 new equipment operators due to the growth of the solid waste. And we also, for this coming up fiscal year with that growth, we added a new trash truck for them. Then on water resources, we're adding 2 new FTEs to the Greenfield Water Reclamation Plant due to the expansion. And then also with that of equipment replacement. So with that, the actual share of the equipment replacement, and we also share with the joint venture, Mesa's cost will be about $453,000 of that. And then also, we have in place for next fiscal year, a fire hydrant replacement contract. Now on energy resources, due to the growth of the expanding of the gas and electric, mostly the gas, we have added 2 gas crews of adding 6 FTEs that'll help with that expansion. And then also in business services, we are adding the 3 FTEs that'll be funded out of the utility fund for the smart metering operations. So including those positions and costs, the 21-22 proposed budget for the utility fund, for 21-22, we are looking at a net sources and uses of just negative of 20 million. However, we're using some of that fund balance that we have available, and so our ending reserve balance percentage is 25.6. Moving on out, as you notice though, the net sources and uses do the negative starts reducing, so that is a kind of a stabilization of the expenses and the revenues coming in. And so you do see the orange of the percentages out in the outer years. The orange is just so that it is, as I mentioned, we try to keep about a 20% for our principals, even though our financial policies say 8 to 10%. This is just kind of a warning, just saying, okay, hey, it's in the outer years, so it does still give us time to see how the expenses are going, how the rates are going, and how revenue is coming in, and things like that. So it's just a caution of saying, okay, here it is. So, but we do have a healthy fund balance of 25.6%, and even going out to the next fiscal year of 22-23. And we're projected to end 21-22 with a 30.8. So just a negative $5 million, which in the utility fund is pretty good from what we've seen in the past on the outer years too. So,
Brian, quick question.
Yes.
I mean, to what extent is growth factored into these outer years? Because it seems like that's been the constant in Mesa for a decade or two.
We do Mayor, we do take into consideration the growth, so growth in accounts, growth in expenses, growth in that. So we do have we work very closely with energy resources, water resources, and environmental management sustainability to see what they're projecting of account growth. And right now, even with the growth that we have been having, we've been averaging for water resources, we've been averaging about 1.5% to 2% account growth, even with that expansion. So our account growth, we still do put all of that in there on that. So what also happens though, which has been happening for the past, I think ever since I've been here, and even longer than that, is even though our account growth is growing, what is happening is a lot of the appliances are being more efficient. So the consumption is down. So even though we're having that account growth and we're thinking we're gonna get this revenue, what's happening is the consumption has been leveling off and going down because of the more efficient. So we try to take that into consideration and when we're forecasting that all out.
We've got some big capital utility projects on the horizon. I mean, ultimately, we're going to be expanding the Signal Butte plant again. We've got the GRIC, water conveyance project. Are those factored into these outer years as well?
Yes, Mayor, they'll be included in the debt service, and you'll see in the next presentation, those projects are included.
Okay.
So that is one of as the city manager mentioned, that is one of the drivers of expenses is the debt service of the expansions and just regular debt service coming on of repairs and maintenance and and the expansion stuff.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, did I see your hand up?
Yes, I had just a quick question on the Greenfield Water Reclamation Equipment Replacement. Who do we share those costs with?
So we share those costs with Gilbert and Queen Creek. So it's a joint venture between us, Gilbert, and Queen Creek. And what happens is that we manage it. So our personnel and everything else down there is down there managing it. It is located in Gilbert, but we do have a joint venture agreement with them. And so what happens is that even though, so for instance, the equipment is $1 million, what we do is depending on what the share is of the ownership of that joint venture, will be how each one pays for it. So it's allocated out to each owner.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on, so to just give you the budget process calendar. So even though today is April 1, and it is not an April Fool's joke that we are starting the budget on this day. So we are going to finish up the proposed budget overview, and then next will be the non-utility project plan. And then, as I mentioned, throughout April, and then just in the beginning of May, we'll have departmental presentations. And then on May 6th, I'll come back and do a budget wrap-up. That'll be a Thursday. And then on May 17th, will be a proposed of the adoption of the 5-year capital improvement program, but then also the tentative adoption of the annual budget. And then June 7th will be the public hearing on the annual budget and secondary property tax with the final adoption. And then on June 21st will be the adoption of the secondary property tax. So with that finishes up the proposed, city manager's proposed budget for fiscal year 21-22.
Okay, thank you. I guess we'll just roll, Mr.
Yeah,
Brady,
that was just, we want to just roll right into the next presentation
on,
and keep this
on
going.
the
Yeah.
capital improvement program. Thank you.
So give us a quick minute to change. And I forgot, I apologize, I didn't introduce Sam Schultz. He is, now that he's leaving, he is, he is our operations budget coordinator. So
Sam,
he
you were
overs-
spectacular. I just want to
Yes.
You bet.
So now moving into his spot is our capital projects and life cycle coordinator. This is Justin Stant. And so he'll be helping me out with the non-utility capital improvement program budget. So this is just the overview. I just want to reiterate, this is just an overview of the projects. And going on to the agenda, it'll discuss the 5-year capital improvement program, and then review current bond authorization and just review active projects, and then the next steps in the CIP process. So just to give an overview, CIP funding, we do have both local revenues, sales tax, shared revenues, and then also regional awards and grants for either regional, state, or federal. For instance, like the MAG stuff, and funding reimbursements. And then CIP funding sources also, we do the bonds of the general obligation bonds. We also have some excise tax obligations that are debt service repaid with revenues generated from various tax revenues. And then also the utility revenue bonds, which is paid for by the revenues generated from the utility fund. So what we also include in here is the operations and maintenance. What we do is it's reviewed throughout the CIP project lifecycle. But then also what we do is when we have a project, we also look at that and incorporate that into the forecast to make sure that even if we do build a project, are we able to operate it and maintain it within the resources that we have? So the budget to ensure and meet the operational requirements, for examples like staffing a new fire station or library, even though we build it, are we still able to get the staff and get the resources in there to be able to operate it on an ongoing basis? So just kind of a current year completed projects. I just want to overview a few of those. So First Avenue improvements, the Marlboro Playground, the Mesa Drive Phase 2, and then the expansion of the Greenfield Water Reclamation Plant, to name a few that are completed this year. So this pie chart shows the 22 through 26 CIP. The one on the left will be this current fiscal year's budget. So for fiscal year 21-22, you'll see utility revenue bonds is about 54% of the pie. And then with general obligations, about 20%. And then the joint venture, that is the Greenfield Water Reclamation Plant. And then some local revenues. And then moving out to the pie chart on the right, so for the 5-year program, utility revenue bonds will be just under 72%, with general obligations about 13.6%. And then some of the joint ventures and local. So you'll see that we are expanding the bonding and the revenue bonds for utility, which is the expansion of Signal Butte, the reclaimed water line going down Mesa, and a few others. So you'll see that's one of the big jumps there. So this is kind of putting the numbers to those. So for fiscal year 21-22, the city manager's proposed budget.
Excuse me, Brian, we have a question for you.
So going back to the pie chart and our local revenues, the percentage changed drastically from 21% to 9%. Now, are the dollars remaining the same? It's just the percentage has reduced because the increased utility revenue bonds are so large that even though the dollars could be the same, percentages change? I'm just trying to understand what that
Yes,
difference is.
Yes and no. So if we go to the next page to put the numbers to it, so
Okay.
you'll see where the numbers to the pie chart. So fiscal year 21-22 proposed budget. If you look at the total down below, so 282, so almost $283 million. But over the life of it, of just what we're just forecasting as planned, is 1.7 billion. So that's where that $60 million of the second line down, local revenues, is about 21% of the 283 million. Even though it increases about $100 million, but in comparison to the total of what utilities is, so we're going from 152 million to 1.2 billion, that percentage, yes. So it does increase a little bit, but from the size of the dollar amount of just planned things, as I mentioned, this is just a plan. We know plans change. The dollar amount, so the percentage would drop.
Right, so you were right, Jen, it's the relative proportion.
Yes.
Overwhelmed by the growth in the other areas.
Yeah, so local revenues are stable, it's just
Yeah.
increased
Yes.
debt. Okay, change the percentage. Okay, thank you.
So just to give you some status of the 2018 and 2020 general obligation bond authorization, we have it in 3 categories: parks, culture, and then public safety and transportation. So just to give kind of a little history of the recent bond authorization. So in 2018 for parks and culture, we had a bond authorization of 111 million. Public safety was 85 million, and that was in 2018. Then in 2020, the one that just passed, we have a bond authorization of $100 million. So going into a little deeper into those of projects that are underway of the Parks and Culture, we have the plaza at City Center, which is right next to us, but also included in that is a solar and parking improvements that'll be funded out of the general fund.
And remember, Mayor and Council, we talked a little bit about this when we had that item from Frank on the solar panels. What we're going to come back to you with is taking those solar panels, that program, into the parking lot north of Municipal Plaza and, I guess, east of 55 North. But in order to put the panels in, we need to reconfigure, we need to redo the parking lots and reduce the median. So we'll have a proposal in this budget, not only for the solar panels, but reconfiguring those parking lots too. So that'll be in here.
So along with that, in the program that's underway, with some library improvements, North Center Street, Monterey Park, the historic post office, Red Mountain Park expansion, and the Palo Verde Playground. On the public safety side, we do have some fire apparatus replacement, and then also Fire Station 221, which is underway. That is all funded by the 2018 GO bonds. Now moving into the transportation, I know RJ, the transportation director, did a presentation on the active transportation just a couple of weeks ago. So, and that was part of the 2020 transportation bond program. And with that, some of the bond projects for that 2020 bond program is the Broadway Road, and then Ellsworth and Williamsfield Road intersection, Signal Butte Road improvements, Sossaman and Baseline, and then also Val Vista Drive from Pueblo to the US 60. So those are just highlighting some of the projects that are under the 2020 transportation bond. So in this slide is a map, and I know it's a little hard, that's why in the back behind, we also have a legend of some of those projects, but just wanted to give you kind of like a breadth of the projects that are underway and part of this overview of where those projects are. So we do have down on the bottom right-hand side, we do show State Route 24 that is going done. Also the Signal Butte improvements down there on the bottom right. Also we have the Fire Station 221 down there. But then also we have the public safety up top. We have the public safety facility going in. So this is just to kind of give you a show of the many projects that are going on through the 2018 and 2020 bond projects.
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. So for the active transportation, we have 20 million allocated to that, and that hasn't been identified yet as far as where and what those improvements are.
Yeah, Vice Mayor, or Mayor, Vice Mayor, recall, that's what, when RJ was here,
A couple weeks ago.
whatever it was here, sorry, I'm losing. He presented to council the process where we're doing the survey. And then I think once we complete the survey and do the community outreach, then it's going to come back to council with those priorities.
I just wanted to restate that for anybody
Yeah.
concerned. Thank you.
Mr. Luna.
Brian or Mr. Brady, the Red Mountain Park expansion, I know we've had our community meetings. When do we anticipate that actually starting?
I do have that here soon. Go ahead, Justin. You got it.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilman Luna, it's scheduled, it's under design right now, tentatively scheduled to be completed at the end of fiscal year 2023.
Okay, great.
So with that overview of the CIP, the non-utility CIP, the next steps would be on April 15th. What we'll do is come back on April 15th with the utility departments, and I will be here for the utility CIP budget overview. And then on May 1st will be a public notice of the proposed capital improvement program. And then on May 17th, along with the tentative adoption of the operating budget, will be a public hearing and for the 22-23 capital improvement, and then on June 21st will be the secondary property tax adoption. So with that, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. So as was indicated, over the next month, there'll be, if you're a municipal finance nerd, stay tuned. This is going to be a prime time.
Riveting
Riveting television for the next month or two. So thank you very much. We look forward to jumping into the weeds on these. If there's nothing else, the next item on our agenda is item 2C. That's appointment to the Board of Adjustment. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Luna, and a second by Vice Mayor Duff. Thank you. We'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Freeman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Duff?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Luna.
Aye.
Mr. Thompson, are you still with us?
No, he signed off.
Okay. I vote aye as well, so that motion passes unanimously with Freeman, Duff, Luna, and myself. Next item on our agenda is to acknowledge receipt of minutes. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mr. Freeman, seconded by Ms. Duff. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Freeman?
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Duff?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Luna.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well, so that passes unanimously. Next item on our agenda is meetings and conferences attended. I know we've all been busy. Who would like to share? Mr. Luna.
Thank you, Mayor. On Thursday, the 25th of March, I briefly attended the Falcon Field Lunch and Learn event. So I encourage any business that's in and around the area to attend those great events to see what's going on in and around the Falcon Field area. So we had many tenants, businesses, and the community. Around the same time, we actually went to one of the pods over at the Mesa Convention Center and enjoyed a Chick-fil-A lunch with them. It's great to see our city staff working really hard to support this effort. So I do really want to thank Chief Camelli and her staff. They're doing an outstanding job. That evening, I was happy to be part of the Community Engagement Division along with my colleague, Council Member Mark Freeman. So it was a great activity to get involved in the trivia night. So we talked about what's going on within our city, and so that was a lot of fun. And I'll let Mr. Freeman talk about what he spoke about, so that was great. And then on Friday, I chaired the Arizona webinar held virtually by MAG. We had great attendance. It was great discussion on transnational discussions on how the pandemic has affected both states in Arizona and Sonora. Mayor, county officials, as well as diplomats were all part of this presentation, and we will continue to work tirelessly to launch our economic growth moving forward. And so I do really want to thank MAG for doing that. This Monday, I had a meeting with a PALMO president. Janice is on to talk about cross-cultural constituency group response to the rise of Asian hate crimes within the nation. And also last Saturday night, I did attend Arizona Asian Chamber of Commerce on a vigil over here at Mekong Plaza. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Luna. You played a game of Mesa trivia?
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. So
Real trivia question is, where did Mark Freeman do it from? Where was
oh yeah, so that's why I wanted him to speak on it. Where did he engage in that activity from? From his district, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I was in my district.
He was.
Apparently, I wasn't incognito. I mean, Mr. Brady saw me where I was at, so.
All right, well, I was just being, that seems like one of the few games I might be good at is Mesa Trivia, so I was a little, hurt that I wasn't invited to participate. But Mr.
Maybe
Freeman.
that's why they didn't invite you.
It's a relative or good is a relative thing. I probably still would have been last, but I would have been less behind than other games. Mr. Freeman, would you like to next?
Well, I was just going to say I really enjoyed our neighborhood outreach individuals there. They put a great trivia night together, and one of the questions I asked is how many acre-feet of water does SRP deliver in a year for irrigation?
Okay, I take back my I clearly would not have.
I figured you'd step out of that one.
All right.
But I also stopped by the Historical Museum, the Mesa Historical Museum last Saturday, had a great crafts fair, car show, and it lasted all day, and it was really packed, and it was good to see a lot of people there at the museum. They're saying that they have an increase of people at the museum during the week.
That's great. I'm not surprised to hear that. That's a great facility and with great exhibits, so thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. And I stopped by on Saturday as well, and it was a great turnout. At first, didn't expect much, given the pandemic and everything, but there was a good turnout, and really good crafts there. I bought quite a few things and enjoyed it, and as well as the play ball exhibit is ongoing, a permanent exhibition. I was with Councilmember Luna also on Saturday night for the vigil in our Asian district, and it was a powerful healing event. I'm so glad that it happened here in Mesa, and thank everybody who organized that and attended. Going back to last Thursday, I attended the Athena Hale Awards, recognizing our very own Tara Hall, our Mesa Police Community Partnership Administrator, for her leadership in the community. Congratulations, Tara. We're very proud of this award that you received. On Friday, I also attended the Arisan Mega Region Council that Councilmember Luna chaired. It was a very powerful discussion with our trading partners in Sonora, Mexico. On Saturday, I also attended a virtual summit on racial inequality and justice, in which our police chief, Ken Koss, was a panelist. And we talked about how we can come together as a community for racial and social justice. I appreciate Mesa PD's innovative guiding principles under Chief Koss' leadership in addressing racial inequality in public safety. So thank you, Chief Koss. On Tuesday, I attended a MAG, a Maricopa Associated Governments Municipal Staff Forum on Regional Homelessness with Deputy City Manager Natalie Lewis and other staff and elected officials across the county. And we discussed our priorities and what we can do together to make homelessness a rare and unrepeatable occurrence for our residents in Maricopa County. So thank you, Natalie, for her leadership and dedication on this issue. Yesterday, I attended the Mesa Rotary Club meeting in which the mayor spoke about our non-discrimination ordinance. And thank you for answering those questions and engaging with our community on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I've had a similar schedule. The last Saturday, I was with our Asian community, with the Arizona Korean Association, hosted a vaccination event at the Asiana Market. And again, I encourage everyone in our community to go out and show our support for our strong and growing Asian community, particularly in light of the national attacks we've seen. And it's a great time to just express our appreciation for all of the communities in our city, but maybe most, particularly right now, the Asian community. Move One Mesa rollout was earlier this week. That Chris Powell is a nationally known fitness expert, been the host of national network television shows, and he's a Mesa resident, and he is launching a program in partnership with Mesa Public Schools to have our kids be more active, and really the whole city. And so I'm glad the city is partnering with Mesa Public Schools and with Mr. Powell for this fitness program, Move One Mesa. It's Move 1 Million, but in Mesa, it's Move One Mesa. So, and I know Councilmember Spilsbury has been very interested in that as well, as we all have. So.
And there's an app for it, so you can get moving too.
I haven't loaded the app yet, so I'm behind. But there's some kind of a Tai Chi movement that goes along with it. It's a lot of fun. I encourage everyone to look into it. Day before yesterday, we had 2 groundbreakings, and it's been a while since we've had a groundbreaking. So that was really exciting to be at in Councilmember Heredia's district. The Banner Desert Hospital broke ground on a new woman's tower. Very substantial improvement, adding great capacity to what is already the largest and busiest hospital in the state of Arizona. So appreciate Banner's investment in our community there. Also that day out I was with Mr. Thompson out in his district for the Cannon Beach Park groundbreaking. This is a surfing lagoon that will be at Power and Warner, surrounded by a hotel and some office buildings and retail. It's really going to be add a lot of, just one more really cool thing to do in our city. So that'll be fun when that's up and running. Great. Anything else you'd like to share with this council?
I'd like to add one more thing, and I should have cleared this before, but I think today is Mesa Kindness Day. Is that right? Councilmember Spilsbury is leading an agenda for hashtag Mesa Kindness. And I think today, April 1st, is designated at that day. But if not, please do something kind and post it on Facebook regardless of hashtag Mesa Kindness as I appreciate her leadership in that. Thank you.
Great. And we again express our condolences to the Spilsbury family. If you missed it earlier, Councilmember Spilsbury is attending her father-in-law's funeral this morning, and he was, I knew him, he's a great man, and we express our condolences to the family. Mr. Brady, what does our schedule of future meetings look like?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder, council, we will be meeting on Monday, April 5th. We'll precede the council study session, or the council meeting with a study session. We'll be beginning early so that we'll have an opportunity to hear from the police department budget presentation. I think at this time we're scheduled for 4:45. That's okay, and we'll hear from the police department and review the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council. Mr. Freeman. Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Luna. We'll do a voice vote. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned.